All right, guys, last album of the evening. This is Eels with their album Electro-Shock Blues. I did pick a song for the opening montage, and that was the main single off of this, which is Last Stop This Town. Electro-Shock Blues is ranked number 122 in the 1990s on Best Ever Albums, number 10 in 1998. Number 707 of all time, it is the Eels' highest rated album on Best Ever Albums. Did not make Rolling Stone's list, and Eels are ranked number 241 of overall artist rankings on Best Ever Albums. So this is their second studio album. We had previously covered the single Novocaine for the Soul, which was on their debut record, which was from 1996 called Beautiful Freak. So that's the only time we've covered them before. This album was released on September 21st, 1998 in the United Kingdom and October 20th, 1998 in the U.S. This is another one of those albums that, and bands I would say too, that got way more popularity out of the UK than they did out of the US. So that's definitely true for the Eels. The genres include indie rock, art rock, and alternative rock. Their highest charting album is 2009's Ombre Lobe, which hit number 43 in the US. But Beautiful Freak hit number 5 in the UK. So depending on which chart you're going by, those are their best, highest charting albums. Their highest charting single in the U.S. is 1996's Novocaine for the Soul. That hit number 39 in the U.S. charts. But in 1997, Susan's House hit number 9 in the U.K. Artists that influenced Eels: many CTS Hall of Famers, Beach Boys, Todd Rundgren, Elvis Costello, John Lennon, the Meat Puppets, Nick Cave, Paul Simon, the Kinks, the Beatles, Elton John, Nirvana, Leonard Cohen, Lou Reed, Neil Young, Nick Drake, Tom Waits, and Yo La Tango. I didn't see a ton of artists that I was aware of that were influenced by Eels, but some that came up were Ben Queller, Andrew Bird, My Morning Jacket, Snow Patrol, and the Subways, oddly enough. So Eels were formed in 1991, well, started in 1991 in Los Angeles by singer, songwriter, and multi-instrumentalist Mark Oliver Everett. So he is basically the brainchild of this band, the one member that's been with them the whole time. He actually goes by the nickname E. It's kind of his stage name. He did this early on because there were several people in his life who shared his name of Mark, so he just goes by E. And in his early teens, interesting story here. Early teens, he went to see a show by the Who, and I guess a special effects laser struck him in the eye, causing him to need glasses for the rest of his life. So be careful when you're out in shows. Don't get those lasers stuck in your eye. Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yep. So there's a decent amount of tragedy in E's life, starting when he was 19 years old. His father died from a heart attack, and E was actually the one that found him dead from the heart attack. His father was actually a famous physicist who came up with like the multi-realities theory or something like that. So I looked it up. I started reading about it, and I was like, I don't know anything about science or physics. I don't understand what's going on. So I stopped doing that. So
you're not an expert now on that? On
no,
physics or whatever?
No, you think I would be, but no, far from it, Josh. So if you like physics, you can go read about E's father, who was kind of prominent in that field. So it really, before they were Eels, it was just him. It was E. And so he signed a deal in 1991 with Polydor Records and released a debut album under that name E. That was in 1992, and the album was called A Man Called E. He also supported Tori Amos on a tour in 1993, and he released his second album that same year, Broken Toy Ship. And around that time, E started playing with a drummer by the name of Jonathan Norton, also known as Butch. And those are the two main artists on this record. You have E and Butch, with some other musicians playing with them. The two of these guys formed the band Eels, along with a bassist by the name of Tommy Walter. They chose the name Eel so that their records would be close to E's records, being in alphabetical order, but then they forgot about bands like, the Eagles and Earth, Wind and Fire, who went EA before EE, so their alphabet wasn't so good. So their intention to have all the records together failed. They were actually way further apart than they wanted them to be. So I found that kind of funny. The band was one of the first bands to sign with DreamWorks Records, and they released their debut album, Beautiful Freak, in 1996, and that did include that hit Novocaine for the Soul. They achieved some modest and national and international success. They actually won the Best International Breakthrough Act at the 1998 Brit Awards. So again, very big and popular, much more popular in Britain than the U.S. And in 96 and 97, they had an extensive tour to support that album. And in September of 1997, Tommy Walter quit the band. And so basically, after the release of Beautiful Freak, a lot of negative things happened in E's life, some personal issues. That included, predominant issue for him was the suicide of his sister. And then his mother also received a terminal cancer diagnosis. And so these events inspired a lot of the lyrics on this record, which you might have heard as being quite dark and certainly dealing with death and suicide and mental illness and things like that. So a lot of this is kind of his response to those losses and him basically coming to terms with suddenly becoming the only living member of his family. So very dark time for E, sadly, at this time. The title of this album refers to the electroconvulsive therapy that his sister, Elizabeth Everett, received when she was institutionalized. And the record does begin with the song Elizabeth on the Bathroom Floor, which is kind of a sparse piece. A lot of the songs on this are kind of sparse, but the lyrics were taken from some diary entries, some final diary entries of his sister. So this is a couple other notes, like the emotional climax of the record is kind of considered between two tracks, and Climbing to the Moon, that draws upon E's experiences visiting his sister in a mental health facility shortly before her death, and Dead of Winter, which is a song about his mother's painful radiation treatment and slow death. And so this is kind of like, it's a pretty dark record, pretty melancholy record, but they've been around. Eels have been around for a while. I checked in the next decade. I don't think we're covering them again. There wasn't a whole lot. This is kind of considered their one of, if not their best album. They have continued as a band through multiple lineup changes, but E kind of remains at the helm of the band. They've released a total of 15 studio albums, with the most recent being 2024's Eel Time. So they're still kicking it around today. So Electroshock Blues. Let's start with Josh. What'd you think of this one?
Well, it was definitely a dark album. I picked up on that through my listens. Yeah, picked up on the suicide, the mental health stuff, the grief, dealing with grief themes. I always struggle with these types of albums that are so like kind of thematically rich, but in a like negative context, negative way. I don't know how to like process it, because I often come to music, for, all the reasons we've talked about, but mainly for like pleasure, right? Like to like amp myself up or to like feel good. So when we have to not deal, but when we encounter an album that is from a negative point of view, like it's hard to process, or it's hard to enjoy it as much as like I do other albums. I can certainly respect this album. In some ways, I feel like Eels is like what I wanted Ben Folds to be. Like I feel like the talent is better, and I feel like the way he uses instruments the way the band uses instruments is more in line. It's kind of like more restrained and like more it just works for me better than it does for Ben Folds. It's not as like performative too. I mean, obviously this is a pretty like morose album and restrained in that respect, but I feel like from like kind of like singer songwriter, piano driven type of artist perspective, it works pretty well. So I can see the talent there. I would like to hear another album that's maybe more happy, or at least a different topic, to see kind of like what else what else Eels brings to the table. I found surprisingly, a lot of the songs to be too short. That's not a complaint that we get too often, but I feel like they are, because most of them are like under 3 minutes. There's like almost, I feel like it left me like wanting more. Like Elizabeth, and that may be by design based on the kind of ideas that he's they're bringing to the album, but I felt like the songs barely got to like a good place, or to like built to something and then like abruptly like ended and was on to the next song. So I thought that was a little frustrating, because I feel like there is stuff here that I did really like. You cited the big singles, Last Stop This Town. That's definitely kind of the most up tempo song I think on the album. Climbing to the Moon's also kind of this bittersweet, but there's just emotion that hangs over the whole album that just kind of infused my listening experience and kind of kept me at a bit of a distance at times, to be honest. And so, I mean, I like this album, but I didn't love it, and just due to the thematic nature, I found that it was a bit challenging. So it's a thumbs up, but it's like one of those albums that we talk about that I respect, but I don't kind of like feel like super strongly about. Like, I can tell the talent's there, I can tell like Eels is talented, and probably other stuff I would like more, but this is kind of a weird place to start with a band too, like such a negative album. Like, in some ways you want to like know, I feel like you would need to know an artist more before you can go there with the artist on this type of topic. Like, I'm not sure like other artists I would even want to like, I'm trying to think of like other artists that I'm like really involved in or really like that I would go on this journey with, and it's tough. So I'm interested to hear what you guys think. What was your experience, John, listening to this?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of know what you're getting after the first listen, because
Right.
Elizabeth on the bathroom floor, you're like, wow, that's a stark song about a suicide. And I think I kind of figured out that, you're trying to figure out who Elizabeth is, right? Like, is it a significant other? Is it a family member, right? Because you can kind of quickly do it. And then it goes into Going to Your Funeral, and then Cancer for
Right.
the Cure, and My Descent into Madness. And you just read the titles, right? And it can tell you what's going on. And then it's like the last track is The Medication is Wearing Off. And then P.S. You Rock My World is sort of like, as much as there's an uplifting song, right? It's like, I will persevere, kind of, in doing it. This is such an interesting album because it's got a very like childlike feel to it. I think it's almost like your child state a little bit, which is where he's at, mixed with, I describe this album as there's things that happen and then the album feels like being medicated, like numbed, but also like what your real-time thoughts are while that's happening. And then that was what I wrote down as I was listening to it. And then like there's literally a track called The Medication's Wearing Off, where I'm like, wow, okay, like I'm on to something right here. I think most of pretty much what you said is valid, Josh. It's a weird spot to meet an artist. It's almost like how I felt about Nick Drake, where I'm like, wow, I feel like I'm getting it all, right? And like it's almost voyeuristic in some ways, but not in a bad way. I liked the album a lot, but the child, like, it's almost like a nursery rhyme feel to this album, like an altered state to some degree. But it's not like, usually when we're talking about drugs, right? Like, we're like talking about drugs either for creativity or for like hiding the pain, right? Like, this is like sort of like a drug-like state that's almost like a dream state, I'd say, where like you're going and, almost like kind of like the idea of like what somebody would take a psychedelic for, like feel all the feelings, right? And just allow yourself to process like what's going on. I respect the arc of this album.
Yeah.
It's a hard listen because to truly appreciate it, you have to allow yourself to sit in what he's writing about. Because if you're just listening to it for the music, there isn't so much there just from the music. I think that you connect, for me at least, I don't connect directly to the music, but the music is the score of a movie to some degree, is how I would describe this. And the movie is like his actual life, as Matt's bio kind of lets you know. I don't think I needed to be told that, though. Like, while I didn't know the whole narrative, I was able to like kind of put together, right, that this is sort of like a song cycle that seems to be about him processing a variety of life events, right? And clearly self-harm and people being ill are on here, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's songs literally about medication, Dead of Winter, Electroshock, right? My Descent into Madness, Cancer, Funeral, Twice, right?
Hospital food.
Hospital, yeah, and the hospital food song is a really great song, but a very stark song. And for anybody who's ever been in a hospital, right, that feeling of and had to stay in a hospital for a period of time. And, you know, I've had to do that. I haven't had to do that for like primary family or loved ones. It's one of those things like you just dread, you know, because you hear it from people and you've done it in a sort of secondary way. And yeah, to truly appreciate this album, you have to allow yourself to feel what he's feeling. And, you know, like you said, Josh, you got to pick your shots, right? Of like when you want to feel that way.
Yep.
I don't know if I struggle as much as you do to get in that space, but what makes albums like this hard is you have to craft the time to be able to do that. And that's where knowing that we were doing this for 2 weeks was very helpful for this album, because over 2 weeks, right, you get more periods of contemplation where you're willing to listen to this. But like if your day's going well and you're rolling or you're winding down your day, right, like it's a hard album to listen to because it just doesn't fit right in that space. So luckily I was able to find a couple spaces where it fit, and once I was there, I really appreciated the honesty and the boldness of the feelings here. Would I come back to this album? I don't know. I feel like I'd have to be experiencing something similar, right? Like it's a very specific type of let me connect with these feelings because it isn't like existential, right? It's very specific experiences, right, that he's writing about in songs. So like it's harder to just like, what's the nature of pain? You know, you can do it, but you know, it's not kind of like Nick Drake or, you know, Morrissey or...
Yeah, it's not abstract either.
Right. It's very direct to a specific experience. Even the cover is unnerving a little bit because there's something always unnerving to me about really sad songs attached to children's like music. I don't know. It's like, it's not triggering, but it makes things particularly sad because it's like a sad child. And in this case, it's like the child's state, you know, and him processing, you know, his nuclear family, right? You know, kind of passing away all at once, and you can't help but throw yourself into it. So good album, but very, very sad, you know. And it's like one of those albums you hope to never truly get the full experience of, because to have it, right, like would mean that the text of the album would have to directly resonate with you. So that's my attempt to kind of square the circle. Yeah.
What I was just about to say, like, I was thinking, like, I don't want to have to go through this, right? I don't want to connect with this album, right? Yeah. It's kind of one of those things he's talking about, like, you know, a lot of times it's like, oh, this resonates with me in some way. And it like, and this was a difficult one. Like this was by far the album that I listened to the most. Because I certainly musically, I saw a lot of, I heard a lot of things that I could see. All right, I could see that becoming more appealing the more familiar I become with it, and because it's definitely it's not one of those records that you just listen to once and you get it, right? It's like you got to kind of find that place for it. As you guys have said, I don't have a ton of different takes that what you guys have. I think. I did enjoy the record. I don't know if I really found the right place to hear it, though, you know, and to fully, you know, get maybe the opportunity that you had, John. But I mean, musically, and I see what you're saying about the childlike element, and I think maybe that's because there's like glockenspiel stuff in here. It's like a very lullaby-esque kind of, you know, dreamlike state, and certainly, like you said, the cover, it's all like there's this vibe of like a child's type album. Certainly very dark undertones, but I think it's very interesting musically. I think it goes into a variety, and I have another Beck. Some of the Cancer for the Cure sounds like a Beck song, right? Like, and so does Hospital Food actually too. It's kind of like these quirky, kind of offbeat, sounding songs, and so I found this album musically interesting. I liked a song like 3 Speed, which is just a very beautiful melodic kind of, simple song structurally there. I thought I'm not sure how you pronounce the name of the title of the song, but "A Feels God," which he pronounces and I saw this in the lyrics, "E feels good," is kind of what the lyric "E feels good," which is himself, but it's written as "A feels God," which I found kind of interesting. I didn't read any more into that, but and then a song like "Last Stop This Town," which is actually a song that I did know. I forgot that I knew that song because I thought that Novocaine for the Soul was the only one that I ever really knew from EELS. But that song definitely stood out, and it makes sense that that's the single. A lot of interesting different choices that E is making on the record, which is for the most part a very it's a very somber, melancholy album with a couple of things here and there that kind of throw a little bit more pizzazz into the music. But yeah, it is a tough one to really process and to truly appreciate, because it is just so, it's not just the lyrics, but just the sound of it is a very it's a sparse sounding. I don't know if I would go so far as to call it cold.
No, I wouldn't.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
But there's
no, because it's got like a lullaby quality to it,
right? And there's something kind of, there's in some parts there's a calming kind of effect that it has, But yeah, I think because of the material, I think because of what he's going through and trying to make sense of it, not just lyrically but also musically, trying to put different sounds to his feelings and trying to put different emotions in that. It's something that I think does get better as the more that I listen to it. I found more in it, but I like you, Josh. I never got to the point where I was like, damn, what a great album. Like I want to go like you, Josh. I don't know if I would really go back to this. I don't even know if I would maybe I'd put 3-Speed or Last Stop This Town on a playlist. There's maybe a couple of songs in here that I would put on a playlist, but yeah, this is a tough one to really for me to wrap my head around in terms of how exactly I feel about it. But I do, like you guys said, I definitely appreciate the artistry here. It's a unique sounding record. I do like his voice. I think he's got a good voice. This kind of raspy, voice, but yeah, it's probably not something that I would go back to a whole lot. And I guess maybe if I ever really did go back to it, I'd be at a time in my life where I wasn't really in a good place, and I don't like that. I want to be in a good place, and I feel really bad that people have to go through stuff like this, but it's sadly a reality for a number of people. But so yeah, overall it's a good album. Like, make no mistake, like it's a very good album. I could see why it's highly regarded or highly ranked. It's a tough one to be like, oh, I want to listen to this album a lot. But I having said that, I did get more out of this the more I listened to it. Maybe a couple more listens. Like I listened to this probably like 6 times, I would say. Wow. And I know sometimes, you guys have said, or we've talked about, like if you once you get past a certain amount, you've kind of plateaued. Like I don't know if there's much more that I'm going to get out of it. So I think I might have plateaued on it. Maybe not. But overall, I think it's good. But definitely different. A lot of mixed emotions kind of listening to a record like this, I think. So yeah.
I described it as like a break glass if needed album, in that I don't think I'd revisit it, but like, if death became, well, it's like, it would feel oddly comforting to know somebody went through it. Yeah. You know what I mean? And like, it's almost like would be having a conversation with someone if you were going through that. But as you said, Matt, like you hope to never need to break that glass. But have I made note of it though? If I ever need it? Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's where I feel like its greatest utility is for me, that like, I know an album like this exists if I'm, in that sense, it's kind of like Pornography by The Cure, right? Like, I don't like to feel like how I feel when I listen to that, but if I need something, right, that kind of like gives me catharsis of that feeling, right? Like, that album exists, right, to help me with that. So
that's a good point.